Hi, my name's Kira, and here are my favorite books from 2022. They're not in a particular order because it was hard enough to narrow it down to like 10, so adding a ranking was just too much to figure out. I loved all of these and definitely recommend checking them out. And before I start with the actual favorites, I do have two honorable mentions. The first being the Heartstopper graphic novel series by Alice Oseman. So I read all of them in like one evening because I enjoyed them that much back in January, like pretty much exactly a year ago now, back in January. And it was in preparation for the show coming out in April, and I love the TV show as well, so those were definitely a fun read. So the second one is The Sound of a Snail Eating by Elizabeth Trudeau Bailey, and I really enjoyed that one for two reasons. First of all, I like snails, so it was really interesting learning more about snails. And the second thing is that it focuses on an illness that someone I care about has. So it was interesting to get some more insight on that matter. Now it's time for my 10 favorite reads of 2022. Okay, the first one I want to talk about is There's No Such Thing as an Easy Job by Kikuro Tsumura, and it was translated by Polly Barton. Yeah, it was translated by Polly Barton. So this book follows a woman who had burnout at her job and is now trying out different types of jobs. And it's just really easy to, her only requirement is that it is an easy job. So you kind of follow her having the job, something about it making it not as easy as she had hoped, and going back to the job finding lady. And it's really interesting to kind of follow that and see the character progression, and as someone who has to go find a job soon, it's really interesting to see that you might just have to try out a bit to find the perfect thing for you, and then there really is no such thing as an easy job. But for me it was quite the optimistic outlook, and it really got me thinking about life and what matters. The next book is My Pen is the Wing of a Bird, and I really enjoyed this one as well. It's a collection of stories written by African women, and I don't think I've ever read anything by African women before, so it was really interesting to see their perspective. And the stories they were all short stories. There was a lot of variation in between them in terms of themes and topics and perspectives taken, and it was super enjoyable, and it was amazing. I would highly recommend reading it. In similar vein to short stories, there was an essay collection that I really enjoyed this year, and that is Trick Mirror by Gia Tolentino. The essays focus on different aspects of internet and digital culture and the like, so it was really, which is something I study at university, so it was really interesting to see different perspectives of the digital landscape and look at and having a more critical analysis of it. But it's not scholarly in a sense that there's lots of sources cited. It's very entertaining. And Gia Tolentino is a journalist, and so her writing is incredible, and yeah, I would highly recommend that essay collection. On a very different note, a book that had me in a chokehold but was super happy was Beach Read by Emily Henry. I mean, there are some deeper themes, but it is a romance novel, and it's a very summery one, and it was one of my favorite books of the summer. And yeah, you can check out my other videos for a more in-depth analysis on it. There was also a duology that I'm just going to count as one book for the sake of having 10, and that is the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. It's been on BookTube, Bookstagram, BookTok for years now, and I finally got around to reading it this year, and I'm so excited that my 21-year-old self loved it the same way my 16-year-old self would have. And yeah, I devoured those two books. And it was also, and following that, I had shortly before finished the Grishaverse books, so it was really nice to then read Six of Crows and then watch the show that came out last spring or last winter. So I can definitely also recommend watching the show because I thought it was really interesting how they twisted in the two series together and made it into something surprisingly good. My favorite audiobook of the year was Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Parton. This one was really fun, and Dolly Parton, her narration was incredible because she narrated herself, and I'm assuming that the written book is just as good. She does have another book out that I really want to read at some point, hopefully soon, but it's a memoir of her going through her 20s, talking about love, life, and the like, so it was really interesting to watch her grow up, and as someone in their 20s, it was kind of nice to see that, you can age and grow up and life gets better, it doesn't end in your 20s. Next on the list is a book that my best friend got me for my birthday, and it's Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. And it's her debut novel, which honestly shocked me because it was that good. So the main character does a cooking and chemistry show on TV, and it kind of just follows her life and how she is powerful in the 1950s, 1960s, around that time. Yeah, it was honestly incredible. It was such an enjoyable read. I learned quite a bit about chemistry, and it made it fun, but it was also just great to read more about the character herself. Back in spring, I read Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, and that book made me laugh out loud so many times. It's probably one of the funnest books I've read this year, or last year, and I highly recommend it. The TV show is also good. I haven't finished that one yet, but the book was absolutely incredible, and so it follows the Antichrist, and he switched at birth, if I understood it correctly. But the writing is incredible. It's really hilarious, and I highly recommend it. Another book that made me think more about life is Olive by Emma Gannon, and it basically follows Olive, who is kind of figuring out, it follows Olive, who's a writer, and she's figuring out not just life, but also the bigger question of whether or not she wants to have children, because all of her friends are having children, but she feels like she's just not in that stage. And then she also has to write an article about the topic, so it's kind of her just figuring out that, navigating that time in her life and figuring out what she really wants. And it really made me think about friendships, and also life and children, and I found it interesting to have something where someone is challenging the more traditional norms, but without judgment, and really just exploring rather than being firmly set in their beliefs. Another favorite was The Cabinet by Eun Soo Kim, which was translated by Sean Halbert, and this was such a strange book, but I very much enjoyed it, and it basically follows this person that has to take care of this cabinet of curious people. I think it's best to go in not really knowing much about it. And yeah, if you want more thoughts though, I did vlog my experience reading it back in summer. And then the final book on my list, which possibly might be 11 now instead of 10, but that is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Max Gladstone and Amal Al-Mohtar. This was one of the last books I read in 2022, and I loved it. It's written in letters between the two characters, and I guess it's sci-fi because it plays in the future, but you never really know entirely what's going on in the world itself, but you get to explore the relationship between these two characters, and it's absolutely magnificent. The writing is incredible. Yeah, so those were my favorite books of 2022. So if you've read any of these and enjoyed them, let me know, or comment down below your favorite reads. Bye!